So number 10, self-reg is a new way to teach kids to make good choices and be accountable for their behavior. That's what the self means.
Ugh.
Sorry. I know. That's a misconception that we hear in all sorts of ways.
So, no. Do I have to, do I mean, seriously?
You do. I'm sorry. I know that this will probably be a quick one because it's a no.
Okay, so here's the part of the misconception that's important. The idea here is that you cannot really work with a child until they take responsibility for their actions. And that thought, which is a classic self-control thought, is so deeply buried in our culture and is such an incredible obstacle to making meaningful progress with a child. And I had a very interesting case just a couple of weeks ago. So, and Susan can, when I'm done, Susan can explain what's wrong with that. But it's wrong. But here's the case. So, talking to a psychologist, working with a teen, and the teen has done some, by societal norms, punishable acts. And the teen is in complete denial about these acts, okay? And so on the accountability approach, you would say that I will not help this child, I won't do any work with this child until he recognizes, owns up, takes ownership. And the psychologist said to me, he's been reading me, by the way. I think you probably know who I'm talking about, too. He said to me, you have to reframe.
Oh, nice.
Yes. He said, you have to reframe his behavior here. So I said to him, well, what do you mean? He said, this isn't denial. This is dissociation. I thought, holy shit. Oh, sorry. But I mean, that's huge. So I said to him, well, explain. Well, this, the kid has a perception of himself, blah, blah, blah. And this was such a blow to his ego.
Yeah.
Not just in terms of shame, not just in terms of anxiety, but also contrary to his self-perception. And so what he's done is he has completely we haven't explained dissociation, we do in the foundations, but blocked from his consciousness. So I said to the psychologist, this is very interesting stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I said to him, well, how do you break that down? How do you bring it into consciousness or whatever? Yeah. He said, you don't. If you try to do that, you will actually harm an ego that is making important progress. What I have learned, he said to me, is that the accountability paradigm is in fact an unbelievable threat to the child. If you push this, it is a stress in the prosocial domain which can be crippling. So what you do is you do your self-reg, right? And one of two things can happen. And one thing that can happen is, and I want to make this, I'll simplify all this in a second. One of two things can happen. One thing that can happen is that the kid continues to dissociate, continues to block, but nevertheless, this does not impede that child's prosocial development from this point on. The second possibility is that the child does work it through in his own way without ever verbalizing it. And if you push it to the verbalization point, then you can cause problems. The important point is this. Okay, so I laughed when Susan asked the misconception, and you can say no. But the point is that we remind ourselves of the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. If your goal is to help this child through what has been probably a traumatic experience, then is what you're doing because of an old paradigm? Is it truly helping the child? Is it truly, or is it in fact harming? And I think I speak for both of us when I say I haven't met the helping case yet. I've met an awful lot of the harm. So there's a deep aspect to that misconception, right? It's not just about doing self-reg, understanding, blah, blah, blah. It's about my concern in these cases is to help this child. And so what I have to figure out for this child, this individual child who is suffering, what is going to help him? And no sweeping Victorian outlook is going to help me here.
You've been talking to me today and for the last couple months about character development.
Yes.
And
that's great.
It really fits here.
Yes, it does. Perfect.
The accountability.
Perfect,
people
perfect.
who are worried about accountability.
You told me I wasn't allowed to use that
well,
term.
it fits, and
Yeah,
so
I agree. I
we
think
go
it's
with
perfect.
and people are worried about accountability often.
I love
if
it.
you actually ask enough questions,
Bang.
most times they're going to tell you they're worried about character. They really do. They use different language, but if you dig in,
I love it.
That's what they mean. But I'm really struck by the understanding of what the word discipline, right? Where it came from, right? It wasn't to punish; it was to teach. And when we really begin to think about the fact that kid does something wrong, and look, it's not just those kids. I tell lots of stories about the stuff I screwed up bad and things that are not nice. And I look back and did I need somebody to tell me I was a bad kid or did wrong or account? No. I needed somebody to teach him, to be with me, to help me through it and help me figure it out. That's this misunderstanding that when you don't hold kids accountable in whatever that that's teaching them to be bad citizens. It's the opposite. Something more is going on. We need to dig deeper, and that child needs us to be by their side in the moments when they do really not nice things, more than anything, because we're going to help them through it. And you will see what those things that you're hoping to come later on will develop. But it's certainly not by saying you're out of the room until you do X, Y, Z, and then you can come back and join.
I just love
the
this.
rest of us. We're here with you, no matter what. No matter what.
Okay, I have to add, sorry. I know we were going to keep this one short. I asked this guy, so how do you do it? Mm-hmm. And so we have a nice self-reg convert up there. Mm-hmm. So he said to me, okay, so you work, first he said he had like a hierarchy. You start with self-regulation. Okay, so you work on self-regulation. Then you work on self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Then you work on self-understanding. Then he said you work on self-responsibility, and then finally you work on self-improvement. Now, I haven't thought through this, and I need a chance to, but the point that he was making, which I thought was invaluable, was, and he said this, by the way, literally, explicitly, he said to me, what he sees happening is people come in at the top of the hierarchy without having that foundation.
Always.
And that's why they harm the child.
Absolutely. And so that's why we say self-reg first. It's blue brain first. You can do nothing until I'm doing my hand model here, but until you get, that blue brain back online, you soothe first. You soothe first. You can work through all the other pieces. You have to be in those states together, and you are the key. You are the key in how you see that. So.
Yes.